Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we are joined tonight by Dr. Jerry Poggi. Thank you, Jerry, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this show tonight, we're going to be talking about affordable housing, and it's a follow-up to a show that Jerry joined us in back in February. And recently, the NAACP sponsored a Housing for All forum, a community forum held just a few weeks ago, and we had the opportunity to be there and interview some of the participants. Let's take a look at the video.
Affordable housing is extremely important to the school system. It's important to our students and families because we know that housing insecurity affects very much how well a child succeeds in school. We know that housing mobility is a problem for many students in many of our schools. That's one reason why affordable housing is important to the school system. We also have 25,000 employees, most of whom make well below the median household income in Fairfax County, so it is very hard for them to live where they work, and that affects our ability to attract and retain the best teachers and the best employees. So affordable housing is very important to us for that reason. And then finally, where we put affordable housing matters, because the last thing we want is a county where we have large pockets of people living in poverty and large pockets of people living in wealth, because that creates a sort of a tale of two school systems. And it is so much better for kids and for schools if we can mix, we can get a good demographic mix in every school. So that's the interest in affordable housing from the school system.
I come from retail, and when I have employees that work for me that have to travel 2, 3, 4 miles, 2 and 3, 4 hours just to get to work and back, you realize that's a burden and not only a carbon imprint. So you have to ask the question as, why? Why are they traveling that far? And ultimately, every single time, I can't find a place to live that I can afford. And basically, that's not good enough. Not for the second richest county in the entire USA.
I think affordable housing is so important for everyone in Fairfax County. Our union members are committed to ensuring that everyone can lead a life with dignity. And that means living wages, that means affordable quality health care, and it means affordable housing. And we have a wonderful community here in Fairfax, but we also know we have a lot of work to do to make sure that every family can find a home where they can raise their children and feel secure here in our community.
Worked their entire life in Fairfax County, and now it's retirement time, and they cannot afford to stay because of the amount of money that they receive monthly. So when they receive that money, it's not enough because they're making decisions as to whether they buy medicine or they pay rent. So it's either I not buy my medicine, I'm going to get sick, I not pay my rent, I get evicted. So something has to give. So I'm one of those people who help in the transition of people finding affordable homes, and that means taking them outside of the county. And it's so disheartening that you cannot retire where you have lived your entire life.
Well, thank you, Jerry, again for being with us tonight. The videos that we were able to get and will continue to show throughout the show tonight are so telling of how important this issue is to Fairfax County. We recently, from the video, heard from SEIU, a school board member. Can you talk a little bit about the Housing Forum? Who participated in the event?
So it was a terrific opportunity since we last talked about affordable housing to have held a meeting that drew over 300 people. It had over 30 different co-sponsors telling us that this is a real central issue to the future of our county. People of all economic means have a stake in greater affordability of housing to keep ourselves a cohesive, well-developed, and diversified community. And we held that meeting at First Baptist Church of Vienna a 150-year-old Black Baptist church right in the center of my town. And that's a cultural icon that's experiencing the difficulty of having the land prices rise so high that the community is becoming gentrified out of Vienna. It would be a tragic loss to our community to lose this important cultural resource and the people that manifest that history of our community.
Absolutely, and the forum did such a fantastic job of really elevating and highlighting this issue. And can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that were discussed at the forum?
So one of the biggest challenges, and it's the one that we all have an ability to shape, is creating the political will to be committed towards making sure that the housing is affordable for everybody. Now in my community, I just mentioned I live in Vienna. When my wife and I made the big monumental decision that we were going to take the very small amount of capital we had built up and put it down on a house, we spent about $188,000 to buy a Rambler in Vienna. And we bought it in the area where we knew one of the best schools, elementary schools, was had because we dreamed of having a child. And we did it. We're so happy we did it, but I don't think anybody could do that again in my community. It's too expensive.
And so at the forum, can you talk a little bit about the speakers? Right. Because I think we had such a dynamic lineup of speakers that I do think really elevated this issue in a way that we haven't done in a long time. Can you talk a little bit about the speakers?
So the meeting was chaired by Kofi Annan, who is the local president of the NAACP. But our first speaker who gave a welcoming address to us was Pastor Vernon Walton, a terrific, charismatic minister. And he brought us into his church with a little bit of the prophetic message that sheltering all is part of our religious mandate. He was followed by an extraordinarily wise leader, David Bowers, who is very much involved for the whole Mid-Atlantic region in an Enterprise Community Partners venture that builds affordable housing in partnership with communities. David gave a rousing speech that called us to mindfulness about our prophetic needs to shelter all. And he knows how to do it. He knows every trick in the book to get more affordable housing. He sat on the Affordable Housing Resource Panel for Fairfax County and witnessed our delineation of need, but also the policies and the funding streams and the other aspects that would make a whole housing for all policy happen in Fairfax County. And then our great local congressman, Jerry Connolly, who was instrumental in developing a blueprint for workforce housing and for instituting the 10-year plan to end and prevent homelessness. He spoke from the federal perspective and castigated the current administration for not upholding the federal portion of the bargain that we need if we're going to have a whole community develop in Northern Virginia where everybody of all economic means can live.
That's great. And part of, one of the, I guess, priorities of this forum was to elevate this issue to our elected leaders. Can you talk about, were the elected leaders in attendance outside of Congressman Connolly, or our local elected leaders?
Local elected leaders played a formidable role in the forum itself. So also on the panel was Supervisor Kathy Hudgens. Kathy is the supervisor of the Hunter Mill District, but on the boards of supervisors, she's the chair of the committee that oversees the housing portfolio for the county. And she also attracted Jeff McKay, another member of the boards of supervisors. There were the chair of the school board, Karen Corbett Sanders, was there. And because 2019 is such a pivotal year for elections in the state of Virginia, We had members of the House of Delegates. We had many people aspiring to the school board and to the boards of supervisors be present at this meeting to hear what people had to say.
That's fantastic. And after the forum, what were the lessons learned? What were the key takeaways that community leaders, elected leaders, would be able to walk away with from the forum?
So I think everybody was, amazed at how diverse the communities of people in need of greater affordability were, and how they all came together for one meeting to lift up this issue. This was pretty rare in the Fairfax County to have 30 different co-sponsoring organizations. Some of them represented traditional nonprofit social service organizations. Others were from a more of a nonprofit development community. Others were from benefit agencies that deal with social services and others. But this was a diversity of people all pulling together in the same direction, but perhaps never having heard each of them make the same statements about the affordability challenge and our opportunity to make a difference right now.
That's incredible. And just the fact that you were able to bring over 30 community organizations together. I mean, this is an effort that has really brought people from all over the county together around this issue. I mean, that is such a feat in itself. Can you talk a little bit about what now will these organizations be able to do together to move this issue forward?
So we built new relationship at the meeting. So faith communities who may not have known what each other was doing now has become more aware. For example, Fairfax Presbyterian Church had representatives at this meeting. They were co-sponsors. They're currently engaged in pursuing a project to build affordable housing on their church property. And they are now a beacon to other faith communities who can ask themselves, well, can we help Fairfax Presbyterian? Or could we learn from their model and begin to import it into our community? And I think this has built new energy into the system, and new energy that says we know smart, committed people who want to make a difference. We can be there with them.
Absolutely. And this really started the county-wide conversation, if you will. And I know you're going to join us again in the fourth segment as we talk about what next. How can we best engage on this issue as we move forward?
A lot more to say on that one.
That's right. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Nice going, Spencer. I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go.
Dad.
See you, dude. See ya. You remember me and you're well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling.
Hi.
Hi.
Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rooftop life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and I'm thrilled to be joined tonight with Ken McMillan and Alethea, who are both housing activists, and both at the community forum that we had, Housing for All Forum, just a few weeks ago. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you all for having us.
And I was able to have the opportunity to talk to both of you during the housing and able to really connect with some other participants as well. So I'd like to take a look at this second video.
Well, the two jobs I have are just minimum wage. I still struggle with transportation, and the thing I'm trying to get is affordable housing. No one's, giving me a chance to live in an apartment because they say I don't make as much and I'm doing 80 hours a week. So it's very frustrating. To me, it's unhealthy. I'm not getting the proper sleep that I'm supposed to be getting. I'm more embarrassed when I go to work, knowing the situation that I'm in. I have to hide the fact that I'm homeless.
Facing homelessness, being homeless, living on the streets, I can only speak for myself, but I know from my own personal experience that it was devastating. It was humiliating. It was embarrassing. It brought me to a total stop. I was so fearful that I literally couldn't move. I had to fight inside of myself to get myself to take a step towards solving my own problem with housing, to contact the people that could help me. And it took every bit of emotional energy in me to even take that step because I was so traumatized by having to face that in the first place.
Well, personally, I have experienced housing insecurity. When I was in 4th grade, my father was fired from his job, and that set off a catastrophic chain of events for my family. We were evicted from our house. I spent the better part of my 4th grade living in a motel room with my family because we couldn't find housing. And I know that so many of our Fairfax County residents are either facing that same situation or they are 1 or 2 paychecks away from eviction.
And those stories, I think, were able to really show the human side of this issue. And I want to thank you both for being here tonight and sharing your story with us. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why both of you are so personally invested in this issue and have become activists on this issue. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story and why this issue is so important to you?
Well, I would have never imagined that I would have become homeless as I did. It caught me completely by surprise. And like you heard Barry mention, there is another emotional connection that comes with that. Sort of like looking at yourself in a fishbowl and you're standing outside and seeing that person being you, and now you're in it. To think that years prior to this, I wrote a song about a homeless guy whom I had met. I'm a musician, and I took this guy to breakfast and just wanted to know why was this going on. And that feeling that I had when I was interviewing him and then writing a song about him came back to fruition because now I was my own song. Mm-hmm. And that was a hard pill to swallow. At times, I didn't care to go on, and I'll admit that it was an uphill battle to even come out and ask for help. Once I did that, and helping Fairfax County to develop the Indian Homelessness and 10-year plan. Immediately, because of people like your former guest who was just here, Jerry Poggi, convinced me to be the first test case for transitional housing. That was something that I did not want to do. I'm new to homelessness. There are people before me who have been homeless for a long time, and I've always put other people ahead of myself. I've done that all my life. But the way it was explained to me that this was a better chance, I had a better chance of succeeding and making this, a pivotal point that other people could come into this, then I accepted. I went from transitional housing to paying my own rent. And as I worked, the 11 years that I've been with one company from the time I was homeless, which I was working there when I was homeless, right on up to paying my own rent, still struggling, still living one paycheck to another, not knowing, whether I pay my rent or do I buy food, so forth and so on. And now I've transitioned from that point to a fixed income. I'm now retired, still living in the same place that I went in transitional housing some 12 years ago. My rent is a little bit less than it was when I first got in there, but at the same time, my income has now dissipated. And there's a good likelihood I'll probably have to find another job. But why is this so important? I'm not the only one.
Right.
I was able to see other people around me, where I live, where I work at, going into the Safeway to buy groceries, who are living in the same situation. And I'm thinking to myself, Ken, you've done all this research. You know what it's like. But who's speaking for them? So I'm no longer speaking for myself. I'm speaking for all the children, all the parents of those children, all the people who are just struggling to try and make it because they need a better chance to have the same things that I've had, that I've enjoyed all my life. And I don't know any other way to do it but to get involved and advocate for that.
That's great. And you did touch on, there are so many families that are just one paycheck away of,
exactly.
of this, facing this very real issue, which is why we all should make this a priority here in our county. And Alethea, you were very kind at the forum to share your personal story and connection to this issue and why you are now such an incredible activist on behalf of housing. Can you talk a little bit about your story and how this touches you personally?
Yes. I never knew that I would one day face homelessness, and so it was a shock, and it came up suddenly. I didn't know what to do. I had no experience at all at that point, and so I had to turn to the county and start asking questions. And it was so difficult because I was absolutely terrified, and I was humiliated, and as I tried to move through the process of getting help, I kept finding myself just standing still in place. I was so fearful that I couldn't move sometimes. And I had to fight with everything inside of me to take the next step, to move forward, to try to solve my own problem, really. And I kept looking at the resources that were given me, and they were for people who made more money than I did. And so it became an even greater struggle. I was able to get through the process finally through calling my legislators and asking them for help, and got a good response. I also serve on the Community Action Advisory Board. And in my desperation, I just made a statement there one night about where I was and how I was. I knew I couldn't live on the streets, not because I'm somehow better than anybody else, but I'm 78 years old, and physically I couldn't possibly do it just because of my own disabilities. And so I was stuck. And that night I just made a desperate statement. And told the people on that board what was happening in my life, and that I really wanted them to especially hear the kind of feelings that I was going through in facing this situation. Because I am not the worst case scenario by any means whatsoever. I had not yet lived on the streets. I was just facing the possibility of living on the streets. And there are people way, way worse off than me. In making that statement, it turned out that that very night we had two people from housing who'd come to make a presentation to our board. And then things started moving. I was able to connect with the Bridging Affordability, and even before that happened, I was given an apartment through Cornerstone. I can't say enough about Cornerstone. What they're doing is phenomenal. So I have an apartment, and it took about a year for me to get over the trauma that I had faced. And again, there are people going through, my issue was housing. Some people have a housing issue, money issue, children issues, and so forth, and I don't know how they do it because I could barely get through this. And but after about a year, then my apartment started feeling like home. And now I live such a joyful life. I want everyone to have that experience. I want everyone to have a roof over their head. My own experience is, I just don't want anybody to go through that. I don't want people to feel what I felt. I don't want children living on the streets. I don't want children going to school hungry. We have the resource to do this. We are the second richest county in the nation.
Right.
And we live next door to the #1 county in the nation.
That's right.
Somehow we ought to be able to handle this. And I think one of the things that I have realized through the process is that I didn't get to this point by myself. No one living on the streets got there by themselves. We have some isms to take care of in this country. It is sexism and racism and classism. All the isms have created poverty, have created homelessness, and we need to start doing something about it. And I get frustrated when I think, when I go to one more thing where we're talking about it. I want to go to something where we're doing it.
Right.
Right. So that's why I'm in it. I want to get us. I want to be a part of getting to doing it.
Absolutely. And I know the two of you are going to stay and join us for the next segment as well, so we can continue to talk about this important issue and really show the human side of this issue and ways in which people can receive the assistance. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Your time is gonna come. Your time is gonna come. It's up to you to reach out to be that friend who comes along. Your day is gonna come.
When you make a friend, you make a difference.
Your day is gonna come.
Friendship. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing. Wow!
I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark. That was awesome! Let's go again. 3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
What's it feel like when a woman's having a heart attack? Chest pain, like there's a ton of weight on your chest. Severe shortness of breath. Unexplained nausea. Cold sweats. There's an unusual tiredness and fatigue. There's unfamiliar dizziness or lightheadedness. Unusual pain in your back, neck, jaw, one or both arms, even your upper stomach are signs you're having a heart attack. Don't make excuses. Make the call to 911 immediately. Learn more at womenshealth.gov/heartattack.
Operation Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination.
Honey, have you seen my cell phone?
But don't just imagine.
My park came to life?
Ooh, a plot twist.
Use STEM to build, create.
She did it.
And change the world.
Who's with me?
I'm more of a 2 feet on the ground kind of guy.
It's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and again we have joining us Ken McMillan and Alethea, who are both housing activists. Thank you again for being with us tonight, and we just recently talked about your personal connection. And I know both of you were at the Housing Forum several weeks ago. Alethea, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you heard that were expressed by many other participants in the forum?
I would say the first person that I was struck by was Joanne, who herself is currently homeless. And she helped me to understand some things about homelessness that I wasn't totally aware of. One of them is that there are many more homeless people than meets the eye. That there are people living in relatives' family rooms or living in their master bedrooms and are completely, their life is completely controlled by that living circumstance. If they, like, I was in a living situation where the people decided to repurpose the space I was living in. Another time where I was living, they decided to sell the house. And so there are problems that I didn't even realize when I was doing that I was a part of what is the larger definition of homelessness. Mm-hmm. So I didn't recognize myself as homeless in that sense because I had a roof over my head. Homelessness to me was you live on the streets or you have to spend a night in a shelter and stuff like that. So I think there are many senior citizens, for instance, who are in the kind of situations that I've been in, living in somebody else's house, and when they change their mind about things and it affects your life. So that is one definite thing, and that's a very hidden population. I'm especially concerned about the senior citizens.
That's right. So. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you heard about that may have struck you? And also, you had mentioned earlier, so many people experience this issue and are working 40+ hours. Can you talk a little bit about how this issue affects so many people in our community?
Unfortunately, in Fairfax County, as well as other municipalities across the country, we have a select group of people who are rising above and in being able to afford a house. They can actually go out, they've bought into it. They either buy a condo, you buy a townhouse, or you buy a home, a single family home. That part of the narrative is now missing almost entirely. Think of my parents and others, and probably you too. You grew up in a household where your parents either was just buying a house or actually owned a house, and you grew up into that. You went off to school, you graduated, you came back home for a little while you found employment, and then your parents became empty nesters. That part, almost non-existent now. Children are going off to college, they're coming out, they can't find a place. There used to be a time where children who got out of college, they would hook up with some of their friends who were in college, and they would go and rent a house or a 3-bedroom apartment and coexist together. There isn't anything affordable now. When you come out of school, you can't even find, the average median rent for Fairfax County is put at about $1,800 a month for a single room, okay? And then I just read a report where it is as high as $2,800 for a 3-bedroom apartment and stuff like that. But if your wages don't increase to the point where you can actually afford that, you have the narrative of choosing between medical, food, transportation, or housing, okay? On the other side of the coin is, the rental units that I grew up around this neighborhood, you know, the garden house apartments where it was lovely to go in and get a 3-bedroom apartment. Your family grew up into those. You weren't thinking about owning a home at the time, but you were putting away enough savings that you could do so. Then the housing market crashed. Okay, the recession set in. We had lenders who were, oh yeah, we can put you in a home. They weren't even thinking about the fact that, yeah, you could afford the first house payment, but after that, you weren't going to be able to do so. And so what happened? You foreclosed. Now you in millions of dollars, and that may be an exorbitant amount, but that's the way I see it, in debt that you can't even begin to breathe and think about ownership again. That's gone, you know. Kids are not even moving out the house now. They're staying there, you know. I've seen instances where we had some Fairfax County employees that I talk to. I do this survey all the time. I go out and I don't just look at my situation. I have to feel the pulse of what's going on in my community because, like Alethea, I'm on that same board.
That's right.
So I have to be an activist and involved in my community. So I just can't take and believe my own perception of what I see as the truism. I have to go out and check to make sure. So when I hear a government employee who's working for Fairfax County, living in my building, okay, and he says, I can't find any place to live. And I said, you work at the government center? He said, yeah, I work in the mailroom, blah, blah, blah. Won't mention his name. But if he's having a hard time to live or to find livable livable places to live, what do you think he's going to do? If he has a car, he's going to move to where the rent he can afford.
He can afford, absolutely.
Think of the carbon imprint that he's putting on society by traveling backward and forth to that place where he should be able to work close to where he lives.
Right.
Or live as close to where he works. So those narratives are gone. We have school teachers, we have children. Most of the time children don't, you know, people with children don't go into don't go into homelessness. They go into transitional housing or something like that. But it's still the point that we still have that situation. We should not have that situation.
Right.
You know.
Right.
We have 31,000 units short in a survey we did in 2016. Okay. The county has decided that we're going to supply 5,000 units over 10 years. What's going on with that?
Right.
If we're 31,000 short and we're only going to supply 5,000 in 10 years, then we're always going to be behind the 8 ball and we're never going to catch up.
That's right. And on that point, we actually have a call from Springfield. Jake from Springfield wants to know, what can people do to get involved in this issue? And I know these conversations started at the forum, but what can Fairfax County residents do to really make sure this issue is a priority?
I say, when we put people in office, who does that? We do, okay? So if they're not fitting the needs of the community in a whole, in an equitable way, okay, then we should speak up and say something. Don't be afraid to call on your legislators, your magisterial districts and stuff like that, and have those conversations. If they don't want to listen to you, write the letters. If you have to, go sit in their office until they do. You have to be, involved in this. If we want to change the dynamic, help everybody rise up, because I can assure you there are enough statistics to show that when everybody lives equitably, we all rise together.
Right.
And that is the end of what we want to deal with moving forward. If we can't all rise together, we're separated forever. And if we're separated forever, nobody is doing good.
And Alethea, we have a lot of people on the ballot this cycle.
Yes, we do.
And to speak back to Jake's question, can you talk a little bit about what people should look at in these candidates when they're going to the polls this summer and then on in November?
I would ask some pretty direct questions. I want to know from my potential legislators specifically what they're going to do. Often politicians have some pretty pat answers for the pretty traditional issues.
Sure.
But I want more than pat answers. I want some detail. I want to get a sense of where their heart is. I want to know that this isn't just a priority in words, I want to know that they're coming from their heart. Then I know their words and their heart combined are going to get us some action. When we were at the housing meeting, everybody in the room was encouraged to show up for the budget hearings that are happening next week, I believe. That if we all show up in the room and even possibly hold signs, then maybe we can get the supervisors as a group decide that this is the top priority. I think it should be the top priority. And I actually thought it was because we read so many papers on the cab. I mean, sure. You wouldn't believe the amount of paperwork that comes to the cab, and it's about housing, and it's like, we have this plan, we have that plan, and they're all very good plans, very well planned out. And I guess I told myself that means this is a priority, but at that meeting, Supervisor Hutchins was saying that if we all show up, maybe we can get the supervisors to make it the top priority. So I was wrong. I already thought it was. It's not, and it needs to be. We can't keep having this problem. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be in such a rich county and have people living on the streets who don't want to be living on the streets.
Right.
So I would pressure the legislatures and ask for specific answers.
And recently the Board of Supervisors published their proposed budget, and the hearings you're referring to are about that budget.
Yes.
In your opinion, I'd like to hear from both of you on this issue. Do you believe the Board of Supervisors' current budget prioritizes housing in the way that it should?
Absolutely not. I'm sorry to say, but no.
No. I don't think so, because I think if it had been a top priority, we wouldn't have homeless people. We wouldn't have hungry children going to school every day, and we wouldn't be depending on every kind of church and nonprofit to try to solve the problem. We have billions coming into this county. We have billions generated within the county. And I know we have infrastructure this and salaries that, and all of those are important. I want some of those issues to wait while we solve this one. Because these are human beings we're talking about. We're not talking about potholes.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about some of the other programs that they're all important. Mm-hmm. But
So
when you're talking about human beings, it has to be number one.
That's right.
It's not just an economic issue, it's a moral issue.
That's right.
Okay, it's a morale that we need to set aside and think about everybody else instead of ourselves all the time.
And I want to ask this last question, just yes, will housing be a priority for you when you go to the polls?
Always has been for a number of years for me.
Great, great.
And I'll hold you to it.
We're about to head to break, but please stay with us and we'll be right back.
This is the story of a boy who was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Being a dad is an adventure full of special moments.
A cruise!
Surprise!
Unexpected moments.
I got this.
And even awkward moments.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
But every moment you spend with your kids, even the smallest moments, can make the biggest impact on your child's life. So take a moment to be a dad today.
So, I'm kind of new here,
but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and I'm joined again with Dr. Jerry Poggi, who serves on the Housing Committee of the Fairfax County NAACP. Jerry, thank you for staying with us tonight.
It's a terrific show. I'm really looking forward to talking about what can we do next and what's happening that's going to change the dynamic.
Absolutely, and we've had an opportunity to hear from people that we were able to interview at the Housing Forum and our guests here tonight. What are the next steps to ensure that housing, one, becomes a priority, and then two, stays a priority for our county?
So the county has been recognizing since 2016 that this is a serious issue that needs a lot more attention. 3 years ago, they formed what was a new priority for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, which was to come up in association with the Department of Housing and Community Development, a new strategic plan for affordable housing for the county. The first phase of that work was completed last year, and just last month, the second phase was completed with a special affordable housing resource panel that came to the boards of supervisors and issued their recommendations. And ostensibly their recommendations occurred across 5 different areas. One was, how do we build the new housing that's coming towards us? 15,000 new units needed over the next 15 years. How do we cope with the affordability of existing units? 9,500 affordable units currently reside in our county, but they're under extraordinary pressure to transform into market rate housing.
Sure.
So if we allow 9,500 units to be transformed, we won't be able to keep up with the pace that we need to have it if we're going to make it affordable for all. The absolute need for our county is 46,000 affordable units because we're in a deficit right now of 31,000 units. So that panel that came forward with a recommendation asked the boards of supervisors to begin to plan for that future, and they're asking to make a commitment now for 5,000 units. So that's a start, but it certainly isn't the end of the road for the need.
Sure, and we're already behind the curve on this issue.
We're behind the curve, so we need to build new, we need to preserve old, and we need to get new land use policies and processes underway so we can accelerate both the preservation and the building process. And then once we have that, we also have to put challenges out there legislatively to Richmond because the state isn't doing its fair share. And we need to do community organizing. That means transforming us from a NIMBY community to a YIMBY community. Yes, in my backyard. We want increased density for the rail to Dulles corridor where you can build higher, and in building higher produce far more affordable units than you would by capping that height. That's what most urban environments are doing right now. Just last month, the city of Seattle, Washington made a commitment to build 27 up zones, meaning these are the places where you would build at a higher elevation, thereby conferring for you the power to build more affordable units, ensuring that people of all economies can live in the same community.
That's fantastic. One of the things we talked about in the last segment was the supervisors, the Board of Supervisors here in Fairfax County have released the proposed budget.
Right.
And we'll be having some budget hearings coming up shortly. And I'd like to get your opinion on that budget. Do you believe that that budget accurately reflects the priority we should be placing on housing?
My personal feeling is no. I mean, we wouldn't have a 31,000 deficit in affordable units, and we'd be anticipating far earlier than the absolute need to have them built, creating the 15,000 additional units that we need to build upon. That Affordable Housing Resource Panel is asking the boards of supervisors for a very important commitment. They want the board to sign off on producing a new guidance for the county executive that says when you bring the budget proposal forward next year, embed within it an additional penny's worth of real estate value that by itself would generate $24.4 million. Now, do I believe that's sufficient? No, I don't. We've had a full penny set aside.
Penny fund, right?
A penny fund,
yes,
that was established when Jerry Connolly was the chair of the Board of Supervisors. But then in 2008, it was cut in half. So we've gone more than a decade with a half penny to contribute to an affordable housing trust fund, which means we've missed over $100 million in feeding that fund that would have done both the job of preserving existing affordable and expanding. So we're behind the 8 ball here. We've got to move much more aggressively. And to get to this year's budget, those hearings are coming up the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th of April.
Right.
Anybody can sign up to talk at those hearings. You could even send in a video if you wanted to. On April 9th at around 4:30, the president of the local NAACP is going to be testifying. Come to that hearing, lift up a sign that says Housing for All, and attend and lend your voice and your cheers to get that message felt by the boards of supervisors.
And those budget hearings, the information about attending those, will they be on the NAACP website? Where can people go to learn about where?
We'll have them on the NAACP website, but you could also go to the county's website and look up the FY 2020 budget, and you'll see when all the hearings are, and you'll be able to plug yourself into those hearings. But the 3 big days of hearings are April 9th, April 10th, and April 11th. And the full board will sit in attendance and listen to what the people have to say. It's our great democratic opportunity to shape the message.
Great, great. Well, I want to also talk to you about the opportunities we have moving forward. You know, this is election year. Every year in Virginia is election year. And in our last segment, we talked a little bit about, you know, placing housing as a priority and being a priority when you go to decide which candidate you'd like to vote for.
Right.
What are some of the questions people should be asking the candidates right now to determine whether or not they really place a priority on housing?
Well, I think you have to ask them, are you going to be able to commit to the pennies that we need to have established in new revenues to propel the system forward? So right now, any candidate who's aspiring to office has their own website. Is the issue of affordable housing one of the issues that they put onto their priorities? If not now, when are they going to do that? We should all be asking that question of every candidate. Where do you see affordability of housing in the future in your possible role as a member of the Board of Supervisors or the school board? You heard from Pat Hines a little earlier in this show about how important housing is as an affordable unit to both the workforce in the school system as well as to the children being educated in the school system. So every elected official, and 2019 is the most important election year we've seen in quite a while. We'll be not only electing the full Board of Supervisors, we'll be electing the full school board, And we'll be electing every delegate to the House of Delegates in Richmond and every senator to the state Senate in Richmond. In fact, right now, those legislators are in session, and everybody who's listening to this broadcast should be contacting their legislator and saying, go forward with the $4 million recommendation to add to the Housing Trust Fund for the state of Virginia. You could do that tonight. Just write off to your elected official and say, support the governor's proposal to add $4 million to the Housing Trust Fund. Now that is an important down payment as well, but I'll just tell you, the other Commonwealth on the Eastern Seaboard is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Sure.
Last year, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as a state legislature and as a governor, signed into authorization a $1.8 billion state bond issue. That's a state that's going to get the economic advantage over Virginia if we lag behind telling businesses, you can move your whole business here, not just your CEO and your CFO and your vice presidents, but you can bring the people who are making $30,000 a year because they'll have housing in Fairfax. That's what's going to give us a competitive advantage, and the state needs to step up and play a better role. Northern Virginia has been the goose that lays the golden eggs for the whole of the state of Virginia, and we're going through a crisis of unaffordability of housing. And if we meet that need, we'll continue to have a vibrant state economy. If we don't, we're going to run into serious problems as a state of Virginia, and we need the next legislators to step up to the plate to do that in Richmond.
Absolutely. And those that are on the ballot this year in particular are really going to be able to have a direct impact on this issue, whether it be at the county or the state level. That's why this issue is so important when you are going to the polls this summer for the primaries, but then also in November as well, because as you have pointed out so eloquently, this issue really affects everybody economically, our education, whether or not we can even attract businesses into Fairfax County.
So let me tell you, on the Affordable Housing Advisory Panel, the head of the Dulles Chamber of Commerce sat on that panel. Now that's quintessentially a business community looking for advantages to the business. He was one of the best persons arguing for the affordable housing plan.
Okay. Well, there's so many ways to get involved, whether it's attending the budget hearings, whether it's asking the hard questions of those that are running for office this year, or whether it's writing to our current legislators and making sure that they know this is a priority for you. Thank you, Jerry, for joining us tonight. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.